Life is to be enjoyed, not to be endured. So sometimes just take some break and breathe and enjoy life. And then she made a very important comment around sitting down to reflect things that have happened in the past 18 months, key events, whether bad or good. What lessons have you learned from them? And how would that help you in repositioning before soaring? We need to learn how to prayerfully and patiently wait. That one is very, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. We want it, and we want it now. And that's why every year we find all kinds of problems, from investing for quick cash. I put in 200,000 naira. In 1 month, you give me 50%. And the question is, what kind of investment are you putting the money in? We just want it now. We need to learn how to wait. Another great point, what should you stop doing? What should you do less? What should you start doing? Just part of the reflection. Think of the things you should do more, things you should do less, things you should stop completely, and things you should start doing. A very important one, before you can soar, unshackle yourself from fear. Lots of panic attack, lots of anxiety because of the things we hear, things we see. For God hasn't given us the spirit of fear, but of sound mind, of love, and of self-control. So break away from that spirit of fear and take some time to reflect and prepare to soar. Praise God. Praise God. I see the ushers with question cards, but for it to be easier for us, just get online, go to your browser, sli.tu, put in hashtag TKS2021, and we'll have your questions there. But if for some reason you don't have internet access, you can take the cards and write. But to make it easier for us, put it online. We're in digital age. It'll be easier for us to put all the questions together. So at this point, I'm going to ask that we bring on Pastor Ben to join us in this Q&A. And also the co-host of the Kingdom Summit, Pastor Brett, a man I've come to love and admire for his simplicity and also the depth of wisdom he brings to the table each time he presents. So let's bring on these two people to join us for the Q&A. But let's have Pastor Brett's profile first. Media, are you ready?
I sat and listened with admiration, and I actually I've made a note of 10 Ds that you told us. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Yes, I tracked 10 Ds that I'm going to make a note of: to be deliberate, to do less, to develop personally, to discomfort, to embrace it, destiny helpers, to find them, to be driven by purpose, to deliberate with counselors, your governance point, to discover new opportunities, and to ultimately just do something, and of course to dive into the Word of God. So these are 10 things I'm going to remember coming out of your talk. So thank you so much. I found it very, very interesting. And so in terms of, I know we're looking for questions from the floor, but I wanted to ask our two distinguished speakers, which of these was the most difficult for you to do? What was the hardest personally? Was it to do less? Was it to embrace discomfort? What was the most difficult part of your journey over the last year?
Thank you very much, Pastor Brett. I think for me, the most difficult thing was actually learning how to say no. Because, the things that I get asked to do are things that I'm actually very interested in. I really want to do them because I have an interest in it. I think that it will make a difference in not only my life, but in other people's lives. So it was just being able to say no. And when you say no, especially in Nigeria, nobody takes no for an answer. So you say no, and they say, oh, no, please don't say no. And then they go away, and they send somebody who they know that knows you to say, oh, please do it. And so that was probably the most difficult thing, because you say no, and then a month later, you just say, oh, you know what? Okay, fine, I'll do it. And you just pile more things on. So for me, it was really that building that discipline and that muscle to say no, because it mattered to me that when I said no, I had more time for myself and to do the things that I really wanted to do as opposed to what other people wanted me to do.
Say yes to the
If I can respond as well.
Thank
I think
you.
the most difficult part for me was actually the transition from being always on the move to having to sit still, So it took some time for me to adjust. It took some time for me to realize that it was actually a gift, a gift of time. And but if you've been doing something for years, it's just a challenge to change course. And I found that a bit difficult to start with, but ultimately it gave me a good chance to just reflect, because during the height of the lockdown in South Africa, I think it was level 4, level 5, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't even go out of your house, and because of that, I had time to pray, I had time to read my Bible, and I was just able to sit still. So that transition was difficult. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great answer. To what extent do you think your experience is mirrored out there with people generally? Some people might say, well, you were the chief executive in a big bank, and so you had the latitude. But do you see people in society around you generally rethinking their future, rethinking priorities? Do you see this as a broad theme?
Definitely, I do. I think everybody was just sort of had the rug pulled out from under them. So even if you didn't want to think about it, because you couldn't go anywhere, you had to talk to the people around you. Normally you wouldn't see them, kind of ships in the night going and coming. And I think it actually forced the whole world to just stop, take a breath, and think, is this really what I should be doing? You had people who, this was the first time they were actually spending quality time with family in years. I remember one of my colleagues saying that his 2 daughters, for the first couple of weeks, they kept on looking at him strangely because he's always on a plane, he's in the IT world. And they just were not used to having him around, But then he said he really got to know them, and it really created the kind of quality family time that is really a gift from God. So I think everybody, has had this opportunity. Thank you.
No, I was just going to say, I completely agree with what Shola has said. I think what we have been through, or what I have been through, I think is fairly common. But in the early stages, it wasn't, because I think that in Nigeria, there was a bit of a denial that, COVID was real. And that was because at that time, the sort of the high-profile deaths, the deaths were very high-profile. So it was felt that, this was a disease of the rich. But I think that as, the health crisis became an economic crisis, everybody started feeling, the pinch and the difficulties of COVID. But like I said, I think that, while it was global, it affected us in different ways. I think the way that we have responded to it has really been very different. And I think that it's one of those things that it has been common across the world, but for every individual, the way that you responded or reacted to the impact of COVID in your life has been very, very personal.
Can you hear me? Great. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Johnson. When I was going to ask Pastor Ben has started by giving us his take on Mrs. Johnson's presentation. I want to ask Pastor Ben to also give us some comments on his views on Mrs. Bora's presentation. Is Pastor Ben there?
Basically, and it's interesting that both Mrs. David Bora and Mrs. Johnson pretty much made the same point. You know, when I look up the word recover in my dictionary, it lists a total of 19 different definitions. Interestingly, the very first one it lists is to get back or regain something lost or taken away. To get back or regain something lost or taken away. And it would appear that for many people, they may instinctively think this way when it talks about recovery. It's about, okay, let me just get back to where I was, before this whole disruption, to our lives came. But there is another definition of the word to recover in my dictionary, and it says, is the third one. It says to regain the strength, composure, balance, or the like of oneself. And for me, that's a key point that I wanted participants to take away. That recovery here, when we speak about recovery, it's not about just going back to where you were or what you used to do or what this thing. And that point came through very strongly in both of the presentations. But certainly, it must entail regaining your strength, your composure, your balance, or the like, which the past 18 months may have shaken or rattled. That's the point that I just wanted to make for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Ben. Thank you. Regaining your balance. Yes, sometimes when we think of recovery, what comes to mind is if I lost 100,000, I get 100,000 back. Sometimes it's not that simple and straightforward, but you recover your strength to go make another 100,000. Praise God. We've got a couple of questions here, so on online, and we will take them one after the other. Now, this question goes to Mrs. Bora. It says, thank you so much I'm really blessed. In the course of your career pursuit, how were you able to balance it with your marriage? Balancing career pursuit with family. Mrs. Bora.
Yeah, by the grace of God. That's the short answer. I think the long answer really is that it's something you never actually get right, in my view. And one must learn how to prioritize in life. To drop lots of things that are nice to have, but really you don't need, So I found that, if I really was going to focus on my career and family, I really didn't have lots of time to spend with friends, to go for weddings and things like that. If I went, I'm notorious for only spending like 10 minutes and disappearing, So it's prioritizing and making sure that, especially with family, you're there for the important times, you're there for the important things. And it's a constant balance, It's almost like, I remember somebody describing it as, it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration. And I think post-COVID, the fact that we are working from home, talks to the fact that we are integrating our work and our family. And frankly, I found that I was working much harder and for longer hours working from home. But it's a journey, and you just have to keep at it. It's not something you're ever going to solve. You just have to keep on balancing it and making sure that you prioritize what is important and you drop all those things that really you don't need to do. In fact, I tell people, if you have to decide between going for an event where whether you are there or not, the event will take place. In fact, they will notice if you didn't show up. And maybe going for your daughter or son's event where if you are not there, it's a big, big thing. It's clear that you shouldn't waste your time, going for those larger events. So please prioritize. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will also ask Mrs. Johnson in 30 seconds to also respond to that. How have you been able to balance career pursuit with family?
I mean, I completely agree with what Shola has said, and really, I think there's something that she said that was, I've never heard it before, and if for those of you who've never heard it, just imprint it on your minds, particularly for women. It's work-life integration. It's really around being able to, you never balance it on a daily basis. It's really about integrating the two of them, making sure that it works. And I think the one thing I would say is that who you marry, your husband, because it's about how do you balance work life and marriage. It's very important. And I think she mentioned earlier about the move to South Africa, how her husband supported her. I know that throughout my career, my husband has supported me, and that's been very, very important. He's the one that has allowed me to fly and travel all over the world, and so that's really, really important. And I know that one thing that we said in WinBase was, you choosing your husband is a key success factor if you're a professional, critical success factor. And I guess the same goes for men, choosing your wife.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. We've got limited time, so when you get online on SLI, if there's a question that has been asked and you like it, just do thumbs up. It goes all the way to the top, and then we're able to answer those ones first. So this question, I will throw it to Pastor Brett. It says, what do you advise someone whose business has suffered from the pandemic on how to recover? Should he pick up a job or bootstrap his way to recovery? Pastor.
Was that a question for me? What advice would you give to a job? I think we're losing the audio. Okay. I think the question was, what advice would you give to somebody who's lost a job? Actually, last year I did a brief series on 50 principles of restart from Scripture. And I think the speakers have summarized it well. And so I won't repeat what they've said, but I can send a link as well to just looking at the restart principles in Scripture, particularly the fact that this is not anything unusual to God. And I would just recommend that one actually digs into the Word and finds out from God, what is it that you really want me to do? God gives each of us something, and there are new opportunities. I got a group of entrepreneurs together from around the world last April when the crisis was at its peak, and all of they saw was opportunities. And so I think what Dr. Johnson said, discover new opportunities, overcome fear, look at what's in your hand, and don't have a victim mentality, but see this as a huge opportunity. As our speakers have said, this is a great opportunity to actually be repositioned. But and then also their point, don't expect things to go back to business as usual. This is a great chance. There's in fact a trend of what they call COVIDpreneurs. So these are entrepreneurs. More businesses were started last year than in other years, and often out of necessity. But these businesses, as Shola was pointing out, are more consistent with who you are, how you're wired, what your passions are, than just doing a job. So if you've lost a job, see this as an opportunity to start a business or to start something new.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pastor Brett. This question, I would like Pastor Ben to kick it off, and then both Mrs. Johnson and Bora will also take a stab at it. It says, Considering the economic situation in Nigeria, mass exodus of talents and security challenges, what sort of advice, what sort of counsel will you give to small businesses in the light of what is happening in the economy, the security issues, and many people just leaving the country, finding talent? What do you have for small businesses? Pastor Ben first.
Well, without a doubt, for many small businesses, their capacity, to withstand shocks is less than maybe some of the bigger, businesses. But the thing about being small also is that that makes you more nimble. It's certainly easier to teach a dog to dance than to teach an elephant to dance. And so don't small, yes, challenges, but also even what it takes to restart as a small business may be less challenging than what it takes for a big, business that, went through a really bad time during this period to restart, including, issues like dealing with tons of employees. A small business, probably a handful of employees, and oftentimes there's a more personal relationship, which makes maybe the employees more understanding and appreciative of the situation and all of that. But government also has, put out a number of programs to support, under the economic sustainability program. There's, there are facilities to provide, helping hand, including, payroll support programs, as well as, some grants and so on. And then the central bank, also has a number of, programs on. And then there are things like if you had, debt with banks, you could more easily get, forbearance and things like that, or deferral of. And so I think that small business see this again as a small business, a cost, correction, as Mrs. Deborah, is easier. Maybe it's a time even as a small business to rethink what it was you're doing. Remember my point earlier on about don't just think about recovery in terms of going back to what you used to do, but maybe just open your eyes to the new opportunities that this situation has bred, and you may then be listed among those bred termed as COVID-preneurs.
Thank you. Can we also have Mrs. Bora make a comment on that before we move to other questions? I don't know if she has any additional comments on small businesses.
Pastor Ben has spoken, and also Pastor Johnson, in terms of starting something new and also having access to finance. I think finance is a problem, but it's not the most important problem, in the sense that with small businesses, even when they have finance, they still struggle. And you look at all the huge companies that started, and like I said, all these big names, all of them started with one person. Amazon started with one person. I think, borrowed money from his parents, tried to raise capital, etc. I think money will come. What is most important in my view is what value are you creating? Is there a particular problem you're solving? And when you recognize the value that you are creating, Dr. Johnson spoke about a daughter doing crochet, people buying that crochet. Now, people are ready to pay for what they value. Okay. I will take myself for an example. I'm ready to pay for convenience. So if somebody will do my shopping for me, if I can order online, so I don't have to physically go there and spend time, because my time is precious. I'm ready to pay for that. So the point I'm making is that you have to understand, what value am I creating? And once you understand that, the next thing is, how do I do this consistently? One of the best ways of standing out in Nigeria, and in fact anywhere in the world, is to deliver quality service consistently. In Nigeria, you can go somewhere, today they're good, tomorrow they're not good, today they come, they don't come the following day. There was this gentleman who invited me to an art gallery many years ago. He said he had paintings, etc. It was a Saturday. He had given me his card, and I just said, because I said I was going to come, let me just quickly go there. The card said open from 9 to 4, something like that. I think I got there at 9:01. The place was firmly shut. So the point I'm making is that if you focus on creating value and you are really serious about delivering service to whom you're serving, over time, that small thing that you start will begin to grow. In fact, you'll have a good problem. You will not be able to cope with the demand, because people will say, oh, this person is so good. Why don't you try him? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Delivering value consistently. Okay, so this question goes to Dr. Johnson about saying no. So there are two questions. I will merge them into one. One said, have you ever had to regret after saying no? And then a follow-up to that is how that impacts relationship. Yes.
That's a good one. I'm in the very early stages of saying no, so I would say that not yet. I haven't regretted it yet. And really, what I should say is that it's not that I just say no without thinking about it. I really think about it. If I'm going to say no, why am I saying no? What would happen if I say no? What would happen if I said yes? So it's a reflective process. It's not just saying no to everything. So to date, I really haven't regretted saying no to anything yet, but who knows?
Great. So also another question for you is on technology. So do you see technology playing a more central role in the balance of work and life in the post-COVID world?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that so COVID has shown us that technology has played an even more central role as the whole world sort of retreated, and the only way that we could do anything was through technology. I think what the world has learned is that it is, what the world has learned is that technology is important. I think that going forward, we will learn how to live a hybrid life, if I can call it that, where technology will still continue to be very, very important, but we'll also realize that human relationships and that the physical being together, we're human beings. That will still be very important. So what we'll find is that yes, technology will accelerate. We'll use it much more. But I would say that in the next 18 to 24 months, we'll come back and realize that what we have to learn how to do is live hybrid lives. That some of your life is online, some of your life is offline. Yes, but it will continue to play a central role.
Thank you. Our time is almost up. Just the last question, and I think I've sent this in a couple of Kingdom Summits around doing business and not signing agreements. And I would like Pastor Brett to respond to this. Someone has got into doing business with friends based on trust. No agreement was signed, and somehow you were betrayed. So how do you move on from there in forming subsequent partnerships? How do you get on to trust people after having been beaten before? Pastor Brett, could you take a stab on that?
I didn't quite hear the question. Could you just repeat that for me?
Okay, so you've gone into partnerships, because part of the things talked about today is partnership. You've gone into partnership with someone you trust, no agreements were signed, and somehow you were betrayed. So now you're struggling with how do you form partnership again, haven't been beaten before. You trusted someone, they betrayed your trust, no agreement was signed, and they betrayed you. So now you're struggling with how do I get on subsequently to enter into partnership or agreement with people to do business with them.
I think both speakers have alluded to having the right people around you, and sometimes we will get into agreements with the wrong people, or we can be the wrong person in a situation. And so I loved Shola's point about destiny helpers, not just people who are business helpers. Find people who help you get your destiny, not just people who help you get some more clients, some more revenue. But if you are in a difficult situation, I think, as Dr. Johnson pointed out, you have to really deal with, not be in denial, deal with the situation as it is biblically, according to Matthew 18. If it's a bad partnership, you have to dissolve it. But often, there is a process for remedying a partnership. And what I found with COVID is that it has revealed flaws in existing relationship structures and partnerships. They were there before, we just papered over them. And so this is a chance to take stock and to have an honest conversation, walk it out in the light, but beware of taking offense. I think you have to decide up front, you're not going to be offended. You'll deal with the situation, because if you become offended, you'll become bitter, and you'll be reluctant to work with people in the future who could actually be a help to you. I think COVID has pointed out that we actually need relationships. We need close relationships with people who are important. And so we must watch out for offense and taking offense. And we must, I think we must guard our mouths, we must guard our tongues, but we must also develop thicker skins. It's a bit of a paradox. So don't get offended, deal with the situation and move on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Unfortunately, this is where we draw the curtain on the Q&A. Time is not always our friend. I want to say a big thank you to Dr. and Mrs. Johnson. Please note you're not a backup. We invite you intentionally. It's always amazing having you around. Thank you so much for honor and grace for coming. Thank you, Mrs. David Bora, for wonderful presentation as well. Thanks to Pastors Brett and Ben for always having them around. Thank you. Let's please appreciate them. Thank you. Please keep clapping.